we want to share with you a few things. We want to put the work that we're doing here with Emerald in the context of the larger strategic innovation that Dr. Messenger just shared, and show you a few moments along the process of developing what we're calling innovation guidelines, which focus how innovation might play out in teaching and learning and in the physical environment of not only the exemplar schools, but all the schools throughout the district. We'll also give you an overview of the visioning and programming process. So we're just finishing up our first day of a series of really collaborative and intense workshops with teachers and students, and just a moment ago with the design advisory team, members of the community, to discover all of the things that make Emerald unique and all the dreams and thoughts that are out there about what Emerald could become in the future. We'll also share with you a few images of what innovation could look like. So thinking about those innovation guidelines and starting to imagine the types of environments, the types of spaces that support innovative learning. And then we'll open it up for some questions and answers about the process or about the design, anything that's on your mind, and finish up with an exercise called I Like, I Wish, I Wonder. Okay, so first, guiding strategic innovation. How do we ensure that Emerald is an innovative school when it's built and will remain an innovative school throughout its life? And how do we connect that to the larger initiatives across the district? So we've been working with the district throughout the summer through an innovation consulting process to develop a series of innovation guidelines that again focus innovation around a few strategic areas. I'm going to share that with you in a moment. Those guidelines were developed through a series of workshops that included principals, included teachers, and also the district leadership. And where we are now in the process is to start to apply those guidelines to each exemplar school and think about what they could mean for the design and planning of that school. So this is what the workshops have looked like. Very intense and very collaborative here. Principals and teachers are prioritizing some of the emerging guidelines that had come out from a previous workshop and seeing which really mattered the most. Interestingly, we got almost exactly the same results among high school principals and also elementary school principals. Then we started to think about the implications. What if we actually did this? What if we put these guidelines in place? So some of the best hopes, some of the concerns, some of the fears of actually moving in this direction. So I'm going to just briefly share with you these innovation guidelines, and I'd like you to, as we share images tonight and talk about this new environment, be looking for opportunities where you could imagine these things taking place. The first is learning is founded in inquiry. The second is learning fosters a culture of curiosity and risk-taking. The third is mastery of learning is demonstrated in multiple ways. So students can show what they learn, not only through taking a test, but perhaps through projects and other opportunities. Learning is a social process. We learn from each other, but we also learn by sharing what we know. Learning is powerful when students create solutions to authentic challenges that impact their local, national, or global community. So by that, an excellent example would be the garden right here at Emerald. So that's an authentic learning experience that students are having that impacts even what they eat in the cafeteria. Learning is personalized and learner-led. So students have choice and voice in what they learn and how they learn it. So what we've been working on with the teachers and principal here at Emerald all day today is how we move from those broad guidelines that apply to the whole district to a series of cornerstones specific and unique to Emerald. So if we take learning as a social process, knowing a little bit about the students and the culture and community here, what would that look like at Emerald? How do we create an environment, how do we create a culture where students can learn from each other and also have the space to learn individually? So these cornerstones, which we'll continue to work on with Emerald, will really become the rudder that steer the ship. Every decision we make about the design of the school will come back to, is it supporting this kind of teaching and learning? So the visioning and programming process, we are in what we call the discovery phase, where we're discovering all that we can about the school and the community. And we've had a number of great workshops today to do that, including our first design advisory team meeting this evening, which focused on the site approach, which we'll share with you, all of you, in a moment. Our next design advisory team meeting will focus on the programming of the school. That's the spaces that go inside the school, how many of them there are, and how large they are. And we have some parameters around that. The direction from the district is that we build about 62,000 square feet, which is about exactly the size of the current building, and we have a budget for that. So what we're looking at is how do we maximize the use of that space and the use of that money to impact teaching and learning. I want to share with all of you our design discovery dashboard. So this is kind of a landing page where you're going to be able to find the presentations that we make. You'll be able to see upcoming schedule of when the next engagement will be. And so that's at designemeraldsplash.com. There are also links to social media there. So we're using the Twitter hashtag SuccessEffectEmerald. So as you're out and about in the community, perhaps seeing other schools, or if you're online and you see something that inspires you, we encourage you to tweet it and share it with everyone, because we want to use this page as a way to share ideas among the larger group. I just wanted to give you a sense of what the discovery report and this discovery phase will conclude in. This is a report from Summit Middle School, a school that we're working with the district to design along with Cunningham Group right now. So that report showed images of the school and our findings about how those spaces support teaching and learning, but also quotes from teachers in teacher focus groups like the one that we held today. And then a series of findings. And the findings are really the drivers for the next step in design. So in this case, one of the findings was, what could we do with a makerspace? How do we create space for students to be able to work on projects and invent new things? And so then we started to dream and imagine. This is actually a student's drawing of their ideal version of Summit Middle School. So you can see in the center there, the community. So she was really imagining at the heart a space where the whole community could gather. That was really important to her. So we'll be doing some of this work tomorrow in the design pattern workshops. Okay, so what could the learning environments look like to support those innovation guidelines that I shared with you? What we've done is just pulled a few images from our work as a way of introducing our design work, and also as a way of showing how the physical environment could be configured to support some of the innovation guidelines that your district has come up with. So first, right off the bat, I just want to say we are not talking about the open classroom tonight. We're not talking about getting rid of classrooms or creating spaces that are totally open and flexible. Instead, what we're talking about is how we prepare students for an ever-changing future. How do we create a physical learning environment that helps them not only learn content, but build the skills that will help them to be successful? So I thought it might be interesting just to show you what some of the most selective colleges and universities in the United States have built in the last 10 years. Some of the examples I'm showing you date back to the middle 2000s. So at Stanford, there's a new school called the D School, which is an interdisciplinary school that combines the business school along with design. And so these are the kinds of environments that they're building at Stanford, where students can rapidly prototype their work and present it and get feedback. Here we are at University of Minnesota in what's called an active learning lab. So there are multiple displays here. And what they've done is classes like physics or chemistry or even intro to psychology that used to be large lecture hall classes, they've gotten rid of those lecture halls, and now students can access videos or read materials in advance and come to class to work collaboratively on a problem. So they're given a question and then guided through that question and producing data and information around that question in real time. This is also at University of Minnesota. They've made a real effort to make thinking visible. So it connects to this idea of learning being social. So students are constantly encouraged to go, in this case, to a glass wall and brainstorm out loud their thinking through a problem. It could be a scientific problem, or it could be understanding a piece of literature. This is at MIT. MIT also no longer offers physics or chemistry as a large lecture hall. They've moved to what's called technology-enabled active learning. And then at Georgia Tech, these are problem-based learning. These are small spaces for 6 to 8 students, full-height writable surfaces, so students are actively learning as opposed to being lectured on content. So this is what a classroom looked like at a school that we designed in Florida before we renovated it. And you can see that this environment is not quite aligned exactly with some of the environments that I just showed you at the colleges and universities. And of course, there are differences at the elementary school level. We'll talk about a few of those. But how can we make this environment prepare students, even at the elementary grade levels, for the types of environments they may encounter later? So the primary way to think about that is creating flexibility, not just in one space, but through a variety of spaces. So no one space can do everything. But if we have the right collection of spaces, perhaps students can find a quiet place to work individually. Students can be part of a team. Students can assemble as a large group. So there's a space in the school for this. There should be a great space where a student or a teacher, when they need to give a lecture to a large group, that they can do that the acoustics are right, that the sight lines are right. So there are classrooms. But that space can do this. It has a garage door here that opens to a common space. You can see how much fun the students have using that. And it also can do this. So these two are working independently, but within eyesight of the teacher who's out there. There's also a space for this. This is at a high school in Minneapolis. Students have to give over 400 presentations of their work before they graduate. So they're constantly learning how to present what they know and share what they know. It can look like this, a place where students can use technology not only individually but collaboratively. And a space for this. This is an elementary school. So these girls are working on a project in a small group room by themselves, but still can be supervised from the hall. Or this. Here, elementary school students are building a rocket outside of the classroom where their peers are working. Or maybe even like this. This is an elementary school in Texas that we designed. And we do believe that school should be fun, inspiring, and magical. It was amazing when we were watching the drop-off this morning to see how excited your students were to get to school. The joy in their faces, the sounds of them running around on the playground. And so that shouldn't change when they get inside the building. It should be just as inspirational. So how might we do that? Well, one way is to consider a wider range of spaces and a different configuration. So many places in North America are configured this way, where there are classrooms on both sides of a corridor. There might be a science lab or a small group room, but generally all the classrooms are the same. And that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on teachers to be able to provide the variety of learning activities we just showed within one space. But what if we could change that? What if we could move beyond an industrial model where every student is the same to an environment that allows us to personalize education? So one way to do that is to think about a learning community, where there's a wider suite of spaces. There are, in fact, learning studios. But there are individual study spaces, and there are seminar spaces where students can discuss things around a table like this. And there are project areas, and there's a space separate from the classroom for students to store their things. So that richer variety of space opens up new learning opportunities. So now, going back to the Learning Innovation Guidelines, I wanted to just get specific about how the physical environment could look to support each of these guidelines. So I'll flash through these pretty quickly. So learning is founded in inquiry. This is a science lab in Vancouver where students are working on projects, and there's storage for their work. Learning fosters a culture of curiosity and risk-taking. These three teachers are taking a risk. They've put all their students together in a space. They've allowed some students to remain in the classroom, and they've given each student choice in where they will work and how they will work. That's a risk, but the space allows them to do that safely. Gardening is a risk, as you all know, but students learn from those mistakes and do better the next time. And risk-taking can also look like fun. It can look like intellectual fun, where we're willing to play with ideas. It can look like physical fun. This is a school in San Antonio in Texas. But to do that, there has to be a professional space where it's safe for teachers to try out ideas and collaborate together. And so many school districts we work with opt to create a collaboration space for smaller teacher professional teams to plan how they will use such a rich variety of space. And this is one of those spaces. Mastery of learning is demonstrated in multiple ways. This is a gallery that's ever-changing with student work. Students here gathering underneath the stair to practice their flutes. This is what we call a prototype gallery, which is where students who are working in STEAM are presenting their work every single day, actually. Every day, a new iteration shows up in this gallery. Learning is a social process. So by that, we mean these moments when you do learn something from your friends. But there are moments also when you learn from the whole group and you might share something. Or when the whole entire school might assemble. So this is in Brussels. This is the heart of the school where all 500 can come together. But there's also moments where learning socially is an individual task, where you might be doing some research on your own, learning from what others have written in the past, and then sharing that with others in the future. So that same space for 500 can be used, in this case, by just these three girls. There's power in the stairs that they can plug their laptop to. So no matter what time of day, this is still a space that can be used for learning. Learning is personalized and learner-led. Hard to find the teacher in this space, but every student is on task and engaged. And learning is powerful when students create solutions to authentic challenges that impact the social, national, or global community. So this is in Vancouver, again, students growing vegetables that are used in the kitchen. Spaces like this, we call this the nest. So this is a quiet, reflective space, but it's still open to the hallway, so you can see in and see what students are doing. And they still have a view of nature beyond. Another one here in Vancouver, a cozy place at the top of the stairs where you can see the trees beyond and reflect, but you're still part of that larger community. So, how do we make all of that safe? You saw some glass, some transparency to the outside, some connections in between spaces. This is a conversation that we'll continue to have throughout the planning and design process, and we're very fortunate to be able to work with security experts here within the district who will advise us as we move along, and also with our local architecture partners. But we did want to just share with you some of the research that's being done nationally around how to make schools safe. So there's generally a paradigm shift that says we do need to lock down schools, but we also need to think about other ways to keep children safe, because there are times when lockdowns don't work. So how do we get students out of buildings quickly? That's something that already the district is looking at in terms of thinking about exits. And how do we create an education system where students feel safe and positive about their school, so it's less likely that there will be an incident? So I'm not going to bore you with all of this research, but there is a lot of research that comes out of crime prevention through environmental design. This is a branch of social science that started in the 60s and has played a role in the design of lots of public environments and is now focused also on schools. So there are at least 5 different ways that they think about that. One is natural surveillance. Can we see what's going on and know if an intruder is coming? Second is access control. How do we make sure that people cannot access spaces they shouldn't be in? And how do we do that in a layered and tiered way? Territoriality and maintenance. How do we show others what space is private and not theirs? This is important in terms of vandalism, actually. Layered security. How do we create multiple safeguards along the way so that we can lock down any portion of the school if there is a crisis? And then how do we create a positive environment? When we talk about security, we're not only thinking about intruders who might get into the school to do bad things, but also how do we make a positive environment that's safe for children on the inside? So that includes bullying and bad behavior. And there's already some great protocols here at Emerald, like the FIRE protocol, that helps students think about how to keep and foster a positive environment. Okay, so just a few diagrams to show what we mean by that. So with natural surveillance, one of the most important things is that the lobby feel welcoming and safe, and that you can see who's approaching your school. And so there were some very interesting discussions today about making a larger vestibule that would still have a locked door to the inside of the school, but would allow parents to be able to come in and pick up children, would allow visitors to be able to wait before they're buzzed into the school. So that's what this is showing. And also designing the shape of the building so that there are no blind spots. There aren't places where people at night could hide and not be seen. The second way to think about that is within the school, natural surveillance. So one of the challenges with double-loaded corridors or even single-loaded corridors where the classrooms have no transparency to the corridor is you can't see if there's somebody who shouldn't be in the hallway out there. And that's a real problem if security is breached. So by making some areas where there is natural surveillance to the hallway, we can determine if someone is there who's not supposed to be. So this is just an example from a school that recently opened in Greenville, South Carolina, that we designed, where the teacher collaboration space is actually on the hallway. So any student walking by here who shouldn't be there, or any adult walking by there, is immediately seen by the teacher area. And then this large anchor here, it's actually a presentation area, is a subtle divider between the common space and the hallway. Next one is access control. And this is really a layered strategy, a tiered strategy, where we think about not only access control at the entrance, creating an area where visitors are allowed in but can't get to the main school, but that each wing of the school could be locked down independently, so that if there is an issue, a person doesn't have access to the whole school, and then from those wings of the school, children can get out directly. And so this is just an example looking at the whole school of how that could work, so that there could be lockdown zones within each wing of the school while providing emergency exits. So I wanted to introduce Adam LaRusso, who will be our project manager. Adam is based in our office here in Baltimore and works with my team. And he'll take you through some of the site opportunities that we've noticed as we've begun to study the site here. Adam.
Thanks, Isaac. So as Isaac mentioned, I'll be bringing you through the site analysis, some of the site constraints and site opportunities moving forward. So here's our site, something that you guys are all pretty familiar with. On the west side, we have Garnett Street. South side, we have West Elmhurst Street. And then the east side, we have Emerald Street. On the north, we have some public parks. If you look at the red dotted line, that shows the site boundary. So that goes all the way to the south where Elmhurst is, to the north where the public parks are. One of the site constraints we'll have to deal with are the flood zones. Those are the blue lines that I have shown on this plan, but I'll talk about that in a couple of slides. So as we were researching the site in Broomfield, what we noticed was that it had a very extensive trail and open space network. So looking directly at where our site is located, you can see it's located directly beneath the Southeast Community Loop Trail and very nearby to some of these public parks. So these are just a few of the many images that you can see that are landmarks or sites along this network of trails. So then, looking at, as we move forward with the school, we can consider kind of conceptually, how do we make Emerald a site or landmark similar to these pictures right here? How do we integrate the school with the trail system? We'll also be looking at sustainable design strategies. These are just a few of the ones that we'll be considering, but the ultimate goal is to get a ZNE building, which is zero net energy building. And we'll be working specifically with a sustainable expert on our team. So this is our site, and this is the topography of our site. If you start from the southwest corner, moving to the northeast corner, it's sloping downward. If you look directly at where the school is currently located, that's a drop of about 10 feet. So what does this mean? If you stand on Emerald Street and you look at the school, you can see that the gym, which is on the right-hand side, it's 2 stories, but it's unobtrusive to the houses on Elmhurst Street because it's located farther down on the slope. If you look at the east view of the site, that's another example. You can see that the gym, although it's 2 stories, it kind of looks like it's a little lower than the front of the school. So these are the flood zones that I mentioned earlier. We have the floodway, which is at the top. That's an area we cannot build on. You look at the 100-year flood zone and the 500-year flood zone. Those are areas we could build on if we needed to, but with certain provisions. So next, we'll have to consider the address of this school. Currently, it's located on Elmhurst. But when we create the new Emerald School, do we want to keep it on existing on Elmhurst, or do we want it to maybe be on Emerald Street? So those are 2 things we'll have to consider. This is showing the daylight on the site, the northern and southern exposure, and this will have an effect on how we design the learning environments. Ideally, we like to have the learning environments face either north or south for the more consistent daylighting. So if we combine the flood zones with the site boundary, you can kind of start to see where our buildable area is. You look at the red area, that's within our site boundary, but that's also within the floodway, so we can't build in that area. The yellow part is within the 100-year or the 500-year zone within our site boundary. And then the blue area is the area that does not touch the flood zones within our site. So that is clearly the buildable area.